the case, there are many permutations of cases. For example, there was one case in which one of the parent, the non-German parent, was apprehended in Italy and put in jail, and the whole case became even more complicated. Now, the work of these Jugendamts in Germany is difficult. Similar institutions in all the member states have difficult work to do. Often cases are not straightforward. And here we do have problems to solve. There's no doubt about that. You have specialists such as our lawyer in Germany, Mr. Carrière, who specializes in child abduction. And there, in cases of divorces in which there've been major difficulties, it's even more difficult if the two parents are quarrelling. Now, I would say I hope that we don't get a flood of such petitions to this committee from other countries other than Germany. It seems that in Germany there is a particular set of circumstances which has led to difficulties, which has led to people coming to the Petitions Committee here in the European Parliament. But I do hope that this does not become a frequently followed path for people from other countries with similar cases. But we have to recognise from time to time in the Jugendamt and in similar authorities, mistakes are made. And as far as we're concerned, we have to make sure that European citizens are not having their rights infringed. Now, if they are, and their cases can't be resolved in Germany by the German parents in the German courts, then they could bring a petition to us if the European rights have been deliberately infringed by an authority in Germany. In such cases, the petitions will be receivable, will be valid. But otherwise, it should be left up to the individual member states to organise a system. If difficulties arise, of course, cases could be brought to us. There are difficulties in administrative law in various European Union countries, especially in the southern half. But the fundamental issue is to make sure that our citizens' rights are not infringed. Thank you.
L'onorevole Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Ich möchte mich sehr bedanken bei der Leiterin.
I'd very much like to thank the leader of the Berlin delegation for her report. I got it yesterday by email, but I haven't unfortunately had an opportunity to look at it in any degree of detail yet. Messrs. Ja and Wieland have also contributed to an understanding of what came out of that trip and have really tried to fill in some of the gaps in our understanding. Certainly, having met with people there, we learned quite a lot of new information, and that I think is something which we now need to assess and have included in the report. As a member of the delegation, on behalf of the committee, I would ask that, not having had sufficient time to be able to submit things so far, I'd be given a couple of days to do that.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Vorsitzende.
Mr. Jahr.
Vielen Dank auch an die Delegation.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful that we were able to conduct this trip. I think when it comes to the substance, Mr. Wieland has really presented the case, but I think were we to say that a number of issues were left open, that wouldn't be entirely fair. The Germans offered us the opportunity of staying for several days. We weren't able to do that. I think had we been there for several days, we would have had more time to have had all our questions answered. So all of the matters that are still in abeyance, I think before the final draft of the report, we ought to send it to Germany to get some answers, for example, on legal supervision. There is supervision of the Jugendamt, but where we think there hasn't been a logical answer, perhaps we can go back to them and ask for further clarification. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair on the German side, because they did offer this multi-day programme, and for reasons of time, we weren't, as a delegation, able to do that. The Jugendamt system in Germany does a lot of different things, and I think we had 2 cases last year with people with migration backgrounds. There was one where the daughter and the mother asked the Jugendamt for the child to be removed from the family environment for a period of time because there was violence by the father, and the Jugendamt set an arbitration meeting so that the family could meet and have it discussed. The family said after this meeting, the father turned up and shot the daughter, and the press said, well, how could the Jugendamt do such a thing? Why wasn't there any police protection? Why wasn't it done in secure rooms? I think it illustrates how far parents will go if they feel that they have had their rights abused. He felt that his honour had been abused, and as he saw things, the daughter was being taken away from him. So it is an area of considerable tension, and we have to assume that most of the findings, most of the decisions are done satisfactorily and harmoniously in line with law relating to children. But you've also got cases not only where the parents divorce but live very far apart, and it's very difficult to get compromises together. So the question might arise, will the child go to the father who lives in Munich, or will the child live with the mother who maybe is in Sicily? It's not always that easy to sort it out, and one of the parts is always going to be disadvantaged. So I think we need to get some figures in here. How many divorces take place? How many cases have to be decided when it comes to the care of the child? We need a slightly clearer set of figures there. My final comment relates to my earlier point that we need to wait with the final version of the report until we've got some further information back from the German authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salavrakos. Madam Chairman, I have a sensation that we're deciding on the competence, the remit of this committee on an ad hoc basis. In other words, I think that in legal terms, we can really only look into things on the basis of individual petitions. And I don't think that we are at liberty to simply decide for our own purposes that this is an issue worthy of our attention. I think we have to have a peg on which to hang these things. I'm against any attempt at generalising issues, because I think that's not always the best, not necessarily the best way to get it to grips with things. If you look at simply the numbers of cases which are recorded, I think that you can misinterpret things such as that. And I don't think that it's right, surely, to stigmatise a country because, look, there are all these cases. Look, we've got this size of the mailbag of complaints coming in on a daily basis. I don't think we can just make the logical leap and say that it's because the system is iniquitous. Therefore, it's very interesting to hear the report from the delegation. It's interesting to look at the particular cases because the delegation, when it was there, did have an opportunity to look into 2 or 3 individual cases. I think that we must confine ourselves to the cases which we were able to examine and not try to make sweeping statements or generalizations. And now for practical purposes, we need to look at what we found, in other words, the evidence of our eyes, and then draw conclusions from that for the future. Because those visits, those 2 or 3 cases can stand us, they can be, if you like, in legal terms, this is a precedent. In the UK, for example, where they've got their own system, case law, in other words, the individual cases are very important, and of course common law goes back by precedent and previous precedent a long, long way. And I think that we could learn something from that approach. Let's try to stick with the individual cases we looked at and build on them. Thank you very much.
Ringrazio il collega Salavrakos.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salavrakos. Mr. Boulan wants to come back, but please give him the time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Just 30 seconds from me to our German friends and responding to Mr. Wiener. The main question isn't really whether there's deliberate policy here, because we are saying that this is an organisation which is misfunctioning, but it's not a deliberate policy. It's just because of the structure of things. Now, the real question is why we've only got petitions in from this particular structure, and also what can be done about it.
La collega Iotova.
Thank you very much, everyone. Mrs. Yotova.
Thank you, Chair. I will very soon present the final version of the report, but I would once again invite our colleagues to make their comments in writing so that we can make sure that everything they think must be included gets in. But let me first make a couple of comments that are of importance, I think. In relation to what Mr. Salavrakos said, maybe because he wasn't part of the delegation, he remained with the wrong idea about how we organized the meetings. We didn't work on 1 or 2 concrete cases. Actually, during our visit, we didn't talk about any specific case. We talked about the problems in general, and we asked for more information on certain cases. And I don't agree with Mr. Salavrakos' conclusion that we're about to make a conclusion on the workings of a whole member state on the basis of 2 or 3 cases. Another thing, when you're asking about percentages and quantitative data, I would like to say here that any citizen who has encountered a problem and has turned to us needs to be heard. As far as the suggestion to ask for written replies from the institutions, I take that on board. Thank you very much.
Grazie, onorevole Iotova.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Yotova. Mr. Salavrakos. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I do apologise here. This was not a narrow point I wanted to make in connection with this report. I was simply saying, talking in general terms about the remit of this committee. And the point I was trying to make was that we cannot take individual cases and then begin to elaborate on that to our heart's content. We need to have individual cases, and we've got to try to look at them in a narrow sense. Otherwise, we're going to quickly end up breaching the principle of subsidiarity. Let's try to draw the net in a tight and strict way. Of course, there are issues outside of that, and of course, they can provide guidance for us for future reference. But let's not forget that we're not here. We're not. Let's keep the line of command straightforward here. We are not the judiciary. We're not a judge and jury. We're not a legal body. We're not a judicial body as such. And it's not really for us to adjudicate on the general principles. What we are able to do is to see in the course of our visits individual cases, and we can try to infer general things on the basis of actual instances. But let's keep things under control. Otherwise, the danger is we're going to stray beyond our strict terms of reference here. Thank you.